The mop hit the concrete floor with a wet slap as Private First Class Maya Chen dropped it, her hands trembling, not from exhaustion, but from rage. 3 months of this. 3 months of scrubbing floors that were already spotless, cleaning windows until her fingers bled, and enduring the cruel laughter of soldiers who thought they knew exactly who she was. But they had no idea what those small scars on her shoulder meant. They had no idea what she'd done in the mountains of Afghanistan before she'd been reassigned to Fort Harrison's most mundane duties. And they certainly had no idea that in exactly 48 hours, everything would change. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. Maya's alarm buzzed at 0:45 hours, just like every morning for the past 93 days. She rolled off her narrow bunk in the female barracks, her feet finding the cold linoleum floor with practiced silence. Around her, 7 other women slept peacefully, their breathing steady and undisturbed. Maya envied them that peace. She dressed quickly in her ACUs, the digital camouflage pattern crisp and properly pressed despite her late night in the laundry room. Her boots, polished to a mirror shine, reflected the dim emergency lighting as she laced them with mechanical precision. Everything about Maya's appearance was regulation perfect, yet somehow it never seemed to matter to Staff Sergeant Bradley Kowalski. The mess hall was nearly empty when Maya arrived for her pre-duty meal. She grabbed a tray and moved through the serving line, accepting scrambled eggs that looked like rubber and coffee that could strip paint. The few early risers scattered throughout the dining area paid her no attention, which was exactly how she preferred it. Well, well, look who's up bright and early for another day of important work. Maya didn't need to turn around to identify the voice. Sergeant Jennifer Walsh had made Maya's life particularly difficult since her arrival at Fort Harrison. Walsh approached with her usual entourage, Corporals Mike Rodriguez and Tommy Fisher, both of whom seemed to live for Walsh's approval. "Morning, Sergeant," Maya replied evenly, not looking up from her eggs. "I've got something special planned for you today, Chen. The visiting officer's quarters need a deep clean before the inspection tomorrow. I'm talking hands and knees, scrubbing every corner until it gleams." Walsh leaned closer, her voice dropping to a whisper. "And when you're done with that, the motor pool toilets are backing up again." Fisher snickered. Maybe she can use that fancy college degree to figure out what's wrong with the plumbing. Maya's jaw tightened, but she kept her expression neutral. They knew she'd graduated summa cum laude from Stanford with a degree in international relations. They knew she spoke 4 languages fluently. What they didn't know, what she couldn't tell them, was why someone with her qualifications and background had ended up scrubbing floors at a stateside base instead of working in military intelligence or diplomatic security. "Understood, Sergeant," Maya replied simply. Walsh straightened up, clearly disappointed by the lack of reaction. "Formations in 20 minutes. Don't be late." As they walked away, Maya heard Rodriguez mutter something about princess treatment and daddy's connections, followed by more laughter. She forced herself to take another bite of eggs, though they tasted like cardboard in her mouth. The morning formation was standard: roll call, duty assignments, and a lecture from First Sergeant Patricia Davis about uniform standards. Maya stood at attention in the back row, invisible among the 200 soldiers assembled on the parade ground. When her name was called for work detail, she stepped forward with the dozen other soldiers assigned to maintenance duties. "Chen, you're with Kowalski today," Davis announced. "Building C needs a complete overhaul before tomorrow's inspection." Building C housed the visiting officers' quarters, just as Walsh predicted. Maya wasn't surprised. The 2 NCOs worked together to ensure Maya's assignments were always the most tedious and degrading available. Staff Sergeant Kowalski was waiting by the supply shed, his arms crossed and his expression sour. At 42, he was a 20-year veteran who'd never seen combat and resented anyone he perceived as having advantages he'd been denied. Maya's education, her obvious intelligence, and what he assumed was her privileged background made her a perfect target for his frustrations. "Grab the heavy-duty cleaner and the scrub brushes," he ordered without preamble. "And don't think you're getting any help today. Rodriguez and Fisher are working on actually important stuff." Maya loaded the cleaning supplies into a wheeled cart without comment. She'd learned that responding to Kowalski's provocations only made things worse. Better to endure his petty cruelty and complete her assignments with quiet efficiency. Building C was a two-story structure that housed visiting dignitaries and high-ranking officers during their temporary stays at Fort Harrison. The rooms were spacious and well-appointed, with private bathrooms and small sitting areas. Under normal circumstances, maintaining such quarters would be a prestigious assignment. Under Kowalski's supervision, it became an exercise in humiliation. "Start with the bathrooms," he commanded. "And I want to see you on your hands and knees. None of this standing up with mop nonsense. Real soldiers aren't afraid to get dirty." Maya bit back the dozen responses that sprang to mind. Instead, she knelt beside the first toilet and began scrubbing with methodical thoroughness. The bathroom was already spotless. Building C was rarely used, and the previous cleaning had been completed just 2 days ago. But she scrubbed anyway, working her way around the porcelain base with the kind of attention to detail that had once helped her identify IED placement patterns from satellite imagery. Kowalski stood in the doorway, watching with obvious satisfaction. "You know, Chen, I've been thinking about your situation. A smart girl like you, with a college degree, probably had big dreams about military intelligence or officer training. But here you are, cleaning toilets like the rest of us. Makes you wonder what you did wrong, doesn't it?" Maya continued scrubbing, her movements steady and controlled. She'd perfected this technique over the past 3 months, complete focus on the task at hand, letting her mind drift to other places and other times. Sometimes she remembered her graduate seminars at Stanford, discussing the complexities of international diplomacy and conflict resolution. Sometimes she thought about her parents' restaurant in San Francisco, the way her mother's dumplings filled the kitchen with steam and warmth. And sometimes, when the humiliation became too sharp to ignore, she remembered the weight of the rifle in her hands and the way the Afghan mountains looked at sunrise. "I asked you a question, Private." "No excuse, Staff Sergeant. I'm focused on completing the mission." He laughed harshly. "The mission? Right. Your mission is to make these toilets shine like mirrors, and that's about as important as you're ever going to get in this man's army." Maya moved to the next bathroom, her knees already sore from the hard tile floor. Through the window, she could see other soldiers going about their duties, mechanics working on vehicles, communication specialists maintaining radio equipment, medics training with stretchers and field dressings. Real jobs, important work, the kind of assignments she'd trained for, qualified for, and been denied for reasons that had nothing to do with her abilities. The morning crawled by with agonizing slowness. Maya cleaned 6 bathrooms, mopped 12 floors, and scrubbed every surface in Building C twice. Her uniform was soaked with sweat, her knees were raw from kneeling on hard floors, and her hands were cracked and bleeding from the harsh cleaning chemicals. Kowalski checked each room with exaggerated thoroughness, running his finger along windowsills and baseboards, looking for any excuse to make her start over. When he couldn't find any flaws, Maya's work was always impeccable. He invented new requirements. "The windows need to be crystal clear," he declared, pointing at glass that was already spotless. Maya retrieved the glass cleaner and paper towels without complaint. As she worked, she caught glimpses of her reflection in the clean windows. A small Asian woman in ill-fitting ACUs, her black hair pulled back in a regulation bun, her expression carefully blank. She looked exactly like what Kowalski and the others thought she was. A privileged college graduate who joined the army for resume building and found herself in over her head. They had no idea that the same hands now polishing windows had once assembled a sniper rifle in complete darkness. They didn't know that her seemingly submissive demeanor had allowed her to gather intelligence from Taliban commanders who'd underestimated the quiet American woman serving tea in their compounds. And they certainly couldn't imagine that the small scar on her shoulder, barely visible beneath her uniform, marked the spot where shrapnel from an IED had torn through her flesh as she dragged 2 wounded Marines to safety under enemy fire. But Maya remembered. Even as she scrubbed floors and cleaned toilets, she remembered every detail of her previous life. The way sand felt between her teeth during windstorms, the weight of body armor in 100-degree heat, the sound of incoming mortars and the silence that followed, the faces of the men and women who'd trusted her with their lives, and the reasons why she'd been willing to sacrifice her career to protect their secrets. But Maya remembered. Even as she scrubbed floors and cleaned toilets, she remembered every detail of her previous life. The way sand felt between her teeth during windstorms, the weight of body armor in 100-degree heat, the sound of incoming mortars and the silence that followed, the faces of the men and women who trusted her with their lives, and the reasons why she'd been willing to sacrifice her career to protect their secrets. At 1200 hours, Kowalski finally declared the building acceptable and dismissed Maya for lunch. She returned her cleaning supplies to the shed, her movements careful and deliberate despite her exhaustion. In the supply room's small mirror, she straightened her uniform and checked that her appearance remained regulation standard. No matter what they put her through, Maya refused to give them the satisfaction of seeing her break. The mess hall was crowded with the lunch rush when Maya arrived. She joined the serving line, accepting a sandwich and soup that she knew she was too tired to fully appreciate. As she looked for an empty table, she noticed a small commotion near the entrance. A group of officers in dress uniforms had entered, their polished brass and crisp creases marking them as visiting dignitaries. Tomorrow's schedule would be packed with formations, demonstrations, and formal dinners designed to showcase Fort Harrison's readiness and efficiency. Maya found a quiet corner table and ate her meal in silence, watching the officers' table from the corner of her eye. She recognized the protocol: advance team for a high-ranking visitor, probably a general making inspection rounds. Tomorrow's schedule would be packed with formations, demonstrations, and formal dinners designed to showcase Fort Harrison's readiness and efficiency. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now, back to the story. She finished her sandwich and was preparing to leave when she heard her name called over the mess hall's PA system. Private First Class Maya Chen, report to the First Sergeant's office immediately. Conversations throughout the mess hall quieted as heads turned in her direction. Maya stood calmly, cleared her tray, and walked toward the exit with measured steps. Behind her, she could hear the whispered speculation beginning. What had she done wrong this time? What new punishment awaited the college girl who couldn't hack real army life? Maya had no answers for their questions, but as she walked across the parade ground toward the administrative building, she felt something she hadn't experienced in 3 months, a flutter of uncertainty that might, if she was very lucky, turn into hope. The administrative building's air conditioning hit Maya like a wall of Arctic air after the humid Georgia heat. Her boots echoed on the polished linoleum as she navigated the maze of corridors leading to First Sergeant Davis's office. The walls were lined with portraits of distinguished officers and photos of Fort Harrison's various units in action: paratroopers mid-jump, tank crews in formation, soldiers crossing rope bridges during training exercises. Maya had studied these images countless times during her previous visits to the building, memorizing faces and unit insignia out of habit more than curiosity. Davis's office door stood open, revealing the first sergeant hunched over paperwork at her desk. Patricia Davis was a formidable woman in her late 30s, with steel gray hair pulled into a tight bun and eyes that seemed to catalog every detail they encountered. She'd served 3 combat tours in Iraq and Afghanistan, earning her the respect of every soldier under her command, except perhaps Maya, who found herself immune to intimidation after everything she'd endured. "Private Chen, reporting as ordered," Maya announced from the doorway. Davis looked up from her documents, her expression unreadable. "Close the door and have a seat." Maya complied, settling into the metal chair across from Davis's desk. The office was spartanly decorated, a few commendations on the walls, a photo of Davis's family, and a bookshelf filled with military manuals and leadership texts. On the desk, Maya noticed a thick folder with her name printed on the tab. "Tell me about your morning," Davis said, leaning back in her chair. "I completed cleaning duties in Building C under Staff Sergeant Kowalski's supervision. All tasks were finished to standard." "That's not what I'm asking." Davis opened the folder and withdrew a single sheet of paper. "I received an interesting phone call about an hour ago. Someone filed a complaint about the treatment of personnel under Kowalski's command, specifically you." Maya felt a cold knot form in her stomach. "I haven't filed any complaints, First Sergeant." "I know you haven't." The complaint came from outside the chain of command. Davis studied the paper in her hands. "Someone with enough rank to make my phone ring directly. Someone who's been watching the situation here and doesn't like what they're seeing." "I don't understand." Davis set the paper down and fixed Maya with a penetrating stare. "Private Chen, in my 20 years of service, I've learned to recognize certain types of soldiers. There are the natural leaders, the ones who inspire others through example. There are technical experts who can fix anything or solve any problem. There are the warriors who thrive in combat but struggle with peacetime routine." She paused, drumming her fingers on the desk. "And then there are the ghosts, soldiers with backgrounds so classified that their personnel files read like Swiss cheese. Soldiers who've done things they can never talk about, been to places that don't officially exist, and carry secrets that could change the course of wars." Maya's expression remained carefully neutral, but her pulse quickened. "You're a ghost, aren't you, Chen?" "I'm a private first class assigned to maintenance duties, First Sergeant." Davis smiled grimly. "That's exactly what a ghost would say." She leaned forward, her voice dropping to nearly a whisper. "Here's what I think happened. You were deep undercover somewhere, probably Afghanistan, doing work that required your specific linguistic and cultural skills. Something went wrong. Maybe your cover was blown. Maybe you had to make a choice between following orders and doing what was right. Either way, you ended up reassigned to the most mundane duty station the Army could find, with a personnel file that's been sanitized so thoroughly it squeaks." Maya remained silent, but Davis continued relentlessly. "The problem is, Kowalski and Walsh don't know what you are. They see a college-educated woman who they assume got fast-tracked through basic training and now can't handle real Army life. They think breaking you down will somehow prove they're better soldiers than you are."
"What they don't realize," Davis said, standing up and walking to the window, "is that you've already been broken down by professionals. Whatever the Army did to you before you came here, whatever punishment you're serving, it's way beyond anything those two could dream up." The silence stretched between them for nearly a minute. Outside, Maya could hear the distant sounds of soldiers conducting drill exercises, their cadence calls echoing across the parade ground. "Tomorrow," Davis finally said, "we're hosting a surprise inspection by Lieutenant General Robert Kane. He's the new commander of Special Operations Command South, and he's making unscheduled visits to every installation in his area of responsibility." Maya recognized the name. Kane was a legend in special operations circles, a soldier's soldier who'd earned his stars through combat leadership rather than political maneuvering. She'd never met him personally, but his reputation preceded him. Brilliant tactical mind, absolute integrity, and zero tolerance for incompetence or corruption. "General Kane has specific interests," Davis continued. "He's been investigating reports of personnel being misused at various installations. Highly qualified soldiers being assigned to duties far below their capabilities, usually as punishment for classified incidents." She turned back to face Maya directly. "I have a feeling tomorrow's inspection might be more interesting than anyone expects." Before Maya could respond, a sharp knock on the door interrupted them. Davis called "Enter," and Corporal Lisa Nakamura stepped into the office. Nakamura served as Davis's administrative assistant, a competent soldier with an encyclopedic knowledge of Fort Harrison's personnel and operations. "First Sergeant, I have those files you requested," Nakamura said, extending a manila folder. "Also, the advance team for tomorrow's inspection needs to speak with you about security protocols." "Thank you, Corporal. Tell them I'll be available in 10 minutes. Nakamura nodded and departed, leaving Maya alone with Davis once again. "Here's what's going to happen," Davis said, returning to her seat. "You're going to go back to your regular duties. You're going to continue being the perfect soldier you've always been. And tomorrow, when General Kane arrives, you're going to be exactly where you're supposed to be." She opened the new folder Nakamura had brought and withdrew several documents. "But first, I need you to understand something. Whatever happened to put you here, whoever made the decision to bury you in maintenance duties, that person made a mistake. Maybe they thought they were protecting you. Maybe they thought they were punishing you. Maybe they just didn't know what else to do with someone like you." Davis held up a photograph, a satellite image of what looked like a remote mountain compound. The compound was a Taliban stronghold in the Korengal Valley, a fortress built into the mountainside that had been considered impregnable until a small team of specialists had infiltrated it during a winter storm. The operation had been classified at the highest levels, its participants sworn to secrecy and then scattered to different assignments to prevent anyone from connecting the pieces. "I don't know what that is," Maya said quietly. "Of course you don't," Davis replied, sliding the photograph back into the folder. "Just like you don't know why 3 different intelligence agencies have been asking questions about your current assignment. Just like you don't know why a general officer would take personal interest in making sure you're being treated appropriately." She stood up, signaling the end of their conversation. "Dismissed, Private. Report to Kowalski for afternoon duties as scheduled." Maya rose and saluted crisply. "Yes, First Sergeant." As she reached the door, Davis called her name one final time. "Chen, whatever you did over there, whatever you sacrificed to end up here, it mattered. Don't let anyone convince you otherwise." Maya stepped back into the corridor, her mind racing with implications. The afternoon heat seemed less oppressive as she walked back toward the maintenance sheds, though she couldn't shake the feeling that invisible eyes were watching her every move. Kowalski was waiting by the supply shed, his expression even sourer than usual. "Where the hell have you been, Chen? We've got work to do." "First Sergeant's office, Staff Sergeant, as ordered." "Well, your little chat cost us time. The motor pool's a disaster, and I want every vehicle base spotless before evening formation." The motor pool was a sprawling complex of maintenance bays, part storage, and administrative offices, where Fort Harrison's fleet of vehicles received service and repair. It was also one of the dirtiest, most challenging areas to clean on the entire base. Kowalski's assignment was clearly intended as punishment for her unexplained absence. Maya collected her cleaning supplies without complaint and began work on the first bay. The concrete floors were stained with decades of oil, hydraulic fluid, and grease that seemed to have bonded permanently with the surface. She started in the far corner, working methodically toward the entrance, her scrub brush attacking each stain with patient persistence. As she worked, mechanics and drivers continued their duties around her, most ignoring her presence entirely. But few offered polite nods or brief greetings. Maya had earned a reputation for competence and courtesy that transcended her lowly status. But others, particularly those loyal to Kowalski and Walsh, made pointed comments about college girls playing soldier and daddy's little princess getting her hands dirty. Maya tuned out their verbal jabs and focused on her task. The repetitive motion of scrubbing allowed her mind to wander, processing the morning's conversation with Davis and its troubling implications. Someone was taking interest in her situation, someone with enough influence to make inquiries through official channels. That could mean protection, but it could also mean exposure. During her time in Afghanistan, Maya had learned that attention from senior officers was rarely beneficial for soldiers in her position. Special operations personnel were valuable precisely because they could work in shadows, accomplish impossible missions without leaving traces. Once they became visible to the conventional military hierarchy, their usefulness often diminished rapidly. But Davis had mentioned General Kane specifically, and that detail gave Maya pause. Kane's reputation for integrity was legendary, but he was also known for his protection of subordinates who served with distinction in classified operations. If he was truly investigating her situation, his motives were likely protective rather than punitive. The first vehicle bay took her nearly 2 hours to complete. Maya moved to the second bay, where a team of mechanics was performing maintenance on a convoy of Humvees recently returned from a training exercise. The vehicles were caked with mud and dust, their interiors filled with sand and debris that would need removal before proper servicing could begin. Sergeant Tommy Fisher supervised the mechanics' work, his attention split between their progress and Maya's cleaning efforts. Fisher was younger than Kowalski, but equally invested in maintaining the base's informal hierarchy. He'd made no secret of his opinion that Maya's assignment to maintenance duties proved the folly of allowing women into combat roles. "Hey, Chen," he called out as she scrubbed near one of the Humvees, "you ever wonder what it's like to actually use this equipment for its intended purpose?" Maya continued working without responding. "I mean, here you are cleaning up after real soldiers who've been out there training for combat. Must be frustrating for someone with your educational background." One of the mechanics, a specialist named Jake Morrison, looked up from his work with obvious discomfort. "Come on, Sarge, leave her alone. She's just doing her job." Fisher's expression darkened. "Are you questioning my judgment, Morrison?" "No, Sergeant, just saying maybe we could focus on the vehicles." "Maybe you could focus on keeping your mouth shut and your tools moving." The exchange created an awkward tension in the bay that lasted for the remainder of the afternoon. Maya appreciated Morrison's intervention, even though it had lightly earned him Fisher's enmity. Small gestures of decency were rare in her current situation, and she filed the moment away as a reminder that not everyone at Fort Harrison had written her off. By 1700 hours, Maya had completed cleaning 3 vehicle bays to Kowalski's grudging satisfaction. Her uniform was filthy, her body ached from hours of physical labor, and her hands were raw from repeated contact with cleaning chemicals. But she'd met every requirement and exceeded every standard, just as she had every day for the past 3 months. "Formation in 30 minutes, Kowalski announced as Maya returned her supplies to the storage area. "Make sure you look presentable. We can't have you embarrassing the unit in front of the other soldiers." Maya nodded and headed toward the barracks to change into a clean uniform. The evening formation was primarily administrative, announcements about upcoming training, reminders about base policies, and preparation for special events like tomorrow's inspection. It was also an opportunity for Kowalski and Walsh to publicly highlight any deficiencies they'd discovered during the day's work. As she walked across the parade ground, Maya noticed increased activity around the base headquarters building. Additional security personnel were visible at key checkpoints, and several black SUVs with tinted windows had appeared in the visitor parking area. The advance team for General Kane's inspection was clearly taking security seriously. Maya changed quickly in the empty barracks and rejoined her unit for formation. The 200 soldiers of Fort Harrison's support battalion assembled in precise ranks, their uniforms crisp and their bearings sharp. Maya took her usual position in the back row, anonymous among the mass of personnel. First Sergeant Davis conducted the formation with her typical efficiency, covering administrative items and highlighting the next day's special inspection. She emphasized that all personnel would be expected to demonstrate the highest standards of military bearing and competence.
General Kane is a combat veteran with extensive special operations experience, Davis announced. He'll be evaluating not just our facilities and equipment, but our people. Every soldier in this battalion represents the Army's commitment to excellence. As Davis spoke, Maya caught sight of movement near the headquarters building. Several officers in dress uniforms emerged from the black SUVs, their bearing unmistakably that of senior leaders. Even at a distance, she could see the precision of their movements and the deference shown by the base personnel greeting them.
The formation concluded with the usual announcements about duty schedules and policy reminders. As soldiers began to disperse, Maya noticed Staff Sergeant Walsh approaching with her typical predatory expression. "Chen, you're on night duty tonight. Building C needs a final inspection before tomorrow's dog and pony show." Maya had expected as much. Night duty was a common punishment detail, designed to exhaust soldiers before important events and ensure they performed poorly when it mattered most. "Understood, Staff Sergeant. Report to Building C at 2100 hours. I want every surface perfect, every window spotless, every floor so clean you could eat off it. If General Kane finds so much as a speck of dust, you'll be scrubbing latrines for the rest of your enlistment." As Walsh walked away, Maya allowed herself a moment of dark amusement. If only they knew what she'd eaten during her time in the Afghan mountains. Military rations cold from the package, local bread that might have been contaminated with anything, water purified with tablets that left a metallic aftertaste. The threat of eating off clean floors hardly registered as intimidation. But tomorrow would bring changes. She could sense it. The pieces were moving, invisible forces were aligning, and her 3-month exile in military purgatory was about to end. Whether that change would bring redemption or deeper punishment remained to be seen. Maya headed toward the mess hall for a quick dinner before her night shift began. Behind her, the sun was setting over Fort Harrison, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple that reminded her of similar sunsets over much more dangerous terrain. The mess hall's fluorescent lights cast harsh shadows across Maya's tray as she picked at her dinner. Around her, conversations buzzed about weekend plans and upcoming leave requests, but Maya's attention was drawn to a corner table where 5 female soldiers sat huddled in intense discussion. She recognized them all, specialists and corporals from various units who'd formed an unofficial support network for women navigating Fort Harrison's male-dominated environment. Specialist Sarah Kim from Communications caught Maya's eye and gestured toward an empty chair at their table. Maya hesitated, then carried her tray over. In 3 months, she'd deliberately avoided forming connections, knowing that friendships could be liabilities if her past was ever exposed. "Heard you had another fun day with Kowalski," Kim said as Maya sat down. "Man's got serious issues with women in uniform." Added Corporal Amanda Torres from the medical unit. "Did you hear what happened to Private Lewis in Alpha Company? Her squad leader's been making her do push-ups in front of the male soldiers whenever she fails to meet standards. Funny how her standards are always different from theirs." Maya listened as the women shared their experiences. The subtle discrimination, the impossible standards, the way male soldiers question their competence while accepting identical performance from men. It was a familiar pattern she'd encountered throughout her military career, though these women had no idea of the extremes she'd endured. "The worst part," said Corporal Janet Reed, "is how they pit us against each other. Like there's only room for 1 or 2 women to succeed, so we better fight for those spots instead of supporting each other." Maya thought about the female officers she'd worked with in Afghanistan. Captain Elena Rodriguez, who'd led mixed-gender teams through hostile territory with deadly precision. Lieutenant Sarah Banks, whose linguistic skills had broken open intelligence networks that saved countless lives. Major Jennifer Walsh, no relation to the sergeant tormenting Maya, who'd earned silver stars for valor that would never be publicly acknowledged. All of them had faced the same challenges these women were describing, but at levels these soldiers couldn't imagine. Combat zones stripped away pretenses about gender roles when survival was at stake, yet even there, female operators had to prove themselves twice as hard for half the recognition. "Chen, you've been quiet," Torres observed. "What's your story? Stanford graduate, multilingual, yet you're stuck scrubbing floors. That doesn't add up." Maya chose her words carefully. Sometimes the Army has its reasons for assignments that aren't obvious from the outside. Kim leaned forward. "That sounds like there's more to it. Are you in some kind of trouble?" Before Maya could respond, Sergeant Walsh's voice cut across the mess hall. "Chen, stop socializing and get to your duty station. Building C won't clean itself." The table fell silent as Walsh approached, her expression predatory. Maya started to rise, but Torres spoke up first.
"Sergeant, it's only 1930 hours. Her duty assignment doesn't start until 2100.
Walsh's eyes narrowed dangerously. "Did I ask for your input, Corporal?" "No, Sergeant, but—" "Torres, you just volunteered to join Chen tonight. Maybe some extra duty will teach you when to keep your mouth shut." Maya felt a surge of anger at seeing another woman punished for defending her, but Torres simply nodded calmly. "Understood, Sergeant." Walsh smiled coldly. "Both of you, Building C, 2100 hours. And Torres, since you're so concerned about Chen's schedule, you can stay until the job's done to your satisfaction." As Walsh walked away, the table remained tense. Maya turned to Torres with genuine regret. "I'm sorry you got pulled into this." "Don't be," Torres replied firmly. "Walsh has been looking for an excuse to target me anyway. I've been documenting her behavior toward female soldiers for weeks." Reed raised an eyebrow. "Documenting how?" "Everything. Times, dates, witnesses, specific comments. My brother's a JAG officer at Fort Bragg, and he told me the only way to fight this stuff is with evidence, lots of it." Maya studied Torres with new respect. The corporal was older than most at her rank, probably 26 or 27, with the composed bearing of someone who'd learned to navigate military politics carefully. "Has anyone ever filed formal complaints?" Maya asked. "A few tried," Kim answered, "but Walsh and Kowalski have connections. Their friends in the NCO Corps close ranks, and suddenly the complainants find themselves with impossible duty assignments or negative performance evaluations." "The system protects itself," Torres added bitterly. "Women who speak up get labeled as troublemakers who can't handle military life. Men who harass us get counseled privately and told to be more careful about appearances." Maya recognized the pattern all too well. She'd seen it play out in special operations units, where the stakes were even higher and the code of silence more absolute. Female operators who reported sexual harassment or discrimination often found themselves transferred to conventional units with their security clearances revoked and their careers effectively ended. "But things might be changing," Reed said quietly. "Word is tomorrow's inspection isn't routine. General Kane's reputation for supporting female soldiers is solid. If he's really investigating personnel issues—" She let the implication hang in the air. Maya felt that familiar flutter of hope mixed with apprehension. Change could mean vindication, but it could also mean exposure of secrets that needed to remain buried. At 20:45 hours, Maya and Torres reported to Building C with full cleaning supplies. The structure loomed against the night sky, its windows dark except for security lighting. Maya had cleaned these rooms so many times she could navigate them blindfolded, but having company made the familiar routine feel different. "So, what's your real story?" Torres asked. "And don't give me that 'Army has its reasons' line. I've been around long enough to recognize when someone's carrying classified baggage." Maya began setting up her cleaning station while considering how much truth she could safely share. Torres had risked punishment to defend her and earned some level of trust. "I used to do different work," Maya said carefully. "Work that required specific cultural and linguistic skills. Something happened that made that work impossible to continue." "Afghanistan?" Maya's surprised look answered the question. "My cousin was military intelligence over there," Torres explained. "She told me about female soldiers who worked undercover operations, blending into local populations in ways male soldiers couldn't. Dangerous stuff that never made it into official records." They worked in comfortable silence for several minutes, Torres following Maya's methodical approach to the cleaning routine. Maya found herself appreciating the company more than she'd expected. For 3 months, she'd endured her punishment in isolation, carrying the weight of her secrets alone. "The thing that kills me," Torres said as they moved to the second suite, "is how they use our gender against us. When we succeed, it's because we had help or special treatment. When we fail, it proves women don't belong in the military. We can't win." Maya nodded, remembering similar conversations with fellow female operators in secure facilities halfway around the world. The uniform might change locations, but the challenges remained constant.
I had a squad leader in Iraq, Torres continued, who used to say that female soldiers had to be twice as good to get half the recognition. But even that wasn't enough for some people. They'd find ways to diminish whatever we accomplished. What happened to him? Maya asked. IED outside Fallujah. Good man who actually understood what we bring to the mission. Torres's expression darkened. His replacement was different. Made it clear that he thought women were distractions at best, liabilities at worst. Maya understood that story's implications without needing details. She'd seen how quickly unit dynamics could change when leadership shifted, how female soldiers who'd been valued team members could suddenly find themselves marginalized or worse. As they worked through the building's rooms, Maya found herself sharing more than she'd intended. Not specifics about her classified work, but general observations about military culture, the challenges of being a woman in traditionally male roles, and the isolation that came with carrying secrets others couldn't understand. You know what's funny, Torres said as they tackled the final suite. Walsh thinks she's breaking us down, proving we don't belong. But every time she pulls this stuff, she just proves how threatened she is by competent women. Maya paused in her scrubbing. She's a woman herself. Worst kind of enemy, Torres replied grimly. She's bought into their system so completely that she thinks tearing down other women will somehow protect her position. Classic internalized misogyny. Maya had encountered similar dynamics in special operations, where the few women who achieved senior positions sometimes became the harshest critics of those following behind them. It was a survival mechanism in hostile environments, but it perpetuated the very systems that made such environments hostile in the first place. At 01:30 hours, they finished cleaning Building C to standards that exceeded even Walsh's impossible expectations. As they packed up their supplies, Torres made a suggestion that surprised Maya. "Want to grab some coffee from the NCO office? I know the guy on watch, and I think you should hear what's been happening with tomorrow's inspection." Maya hesitated, but curiosity won. They walked across the quiet base to the headquarters building, where Sergeant First Class Marcus Johnson was pulling overnight duty. Johnson was a respected NCO with 14 years of service and a reputation for treating all soldiers fairly, regardless of gender. "Torres, Chen," he greeted them with a nod. "Working late tonight?" "Walsh's special assignment," Torres replied. "Any chance we could grab some coffee and maybe hear what you know about tomorrow's circus?" Johnson glanced around to ensure they were alone, then gestured them into his office. "Coffee's fresh, and yeah, I've got some information that might interest you both." As he poured 3 cups of coffee, Johnson's expression grew serious. "General Kane's not here for a routine inspection. Word from the advance team is that he's investigating specific complaints about personnel management at installations across the command. Apparently, some very senior people have been asking questions about how female soldiers with specialized backgrounds are being utilized." Maya's pulse quickened, but she kept her expression neutral. "The interesting part," Johnson continued, "is that his team's been reviewing personnel files and duty assignments for patterns. They're particularly focused on soldiers whose qualifications don't match their current positions." He looked directly at Maya. "Soldiers like college graduates with language skills who are mysteriously assigned to maintenance duties, despite having no disciplinary actions in their files." Maya realized the net was closing around her situation, but she couldn't tell whether that meant rescue or deeper trouble. Tomorrow would bring answers, one way or another. At 05:30 hours, reveille shattered the pre-dawn silence across Fort Harrison. Maya had been awake for 20 minutes, lying motionless on her bunk while listening to the measured breathing of her sleeping barracks mates. After only 3 hours of sleep following her night duty, exhaustion should have claimed her, but anticipation kept her mind razor-sharp. Today would bring General Kane's inspection, and with it, answers to questions that had haunted her for 3 months. Maya dressed with particular care, ensuring every detail of her uniform met regulation standards. Her boots gleamed like black mirrors, her brass was polished to perfection, and her hair was secured in a regulation bun that wouldn't shift during the longest formation. If today brought scrutiny from senior officers, she would meet it looking like the professional soldier she'd always been. The morning formation proceeded with unusual precision.
First Sergeant Davis inspected each rank personally and experienced eye-catching uniform deficiencies that would normally escape notice. Staff Sergeant Walsh and Sergeant Kowalski flanked her, their expressions grim as they prepared for what they clearly viewed as an ordeal to be endured rather than an opportunity to showcase their leadership. General Kane's party will arrive at 0800 hours, Davis announced to the assembled troops. His inspection will be comprehensive and unscheduled. You will not know when or where you might encounter the general, so maintain the highest standards at all times.
Maya noticed several black SUVs already positioned near the headquarters building, their occupants invisible behind tinted windows. Security personnel had tripled overnight, and she spotted at least 2 individuals whose bearings screamed special operations despite their civilian clothes. Following formation, Maya reported to Kowalski for her daily assignment. She expected another degrading task designed to humiliate her in front of visiting dignitaries, but instead found him studying a clipboard with obvious confusion. "Chen, there's been a change to your duties today," he said reluctantly. "You're assigned to Building C escort detail. Some VIPs want a personal tour of the facilities." Maya felt her stomach tighten. "Which VIP, Staff Sergeant?" "Don't say. Just orders from the top to have you ready at 900 hours in dress uniform." Kowalski's expression suggested he found this development as mystifying as it was unwelcome. "Don't screw this up, Chen. If you embarrass this unit in front of senior officers, there won't be enough floor-scrubbing duty in the Army to fix the damage." Maya saluted and departed, her mind racing with possibilities. The timing couldn't be coincidental. Someone wanted her visible and available when General Kane arrived. The question was whether that someone was a friend or enemy. At 8:45 hours, Maya stood outside Building C in her dress blue uniform, every ribbon and insignia positioned with mathematical precision. The morning sun painted the building's facade in golden light, and she could hear the distant sound of helicopters approaching from the south. A convoy of vehicles approached, led by an armored Humvee flying a general officer's flag. Maya snapped to attention as the convoy halted and disgorged its passengers. General Robert Kane emerged from the lead vehicle, his presence immediately commanding the attention of every soldier in sight. Kane was smaller than Maya had expected, perhaps 5'10", with graying hair and weathered features that spoke of decades in uniform. But his eyes held an intelligence and intensity that made his physical stature irrelevant. This was a man accustomed to making life-and-death decisions in impossible circumstances. Accompanying Kane were 2 colonels, a major who appeared to be his aide-de-camp, and a civilian woman in a dark suit whose bearing suggested intelligence community affiliation. Maya recognized the type, analysts and operators who worked in shadows, their true importance invisible to casual observers. First Sergeant Davis approached the group with crisp military bearing. "General Kane, welcome to Fort Harrison. We're honored by your visit." Kane returned her salute with practiced efficiency. "Thank you, First Sergeant. I understand you have a soldier assigned to escort me through Building C." "Yes, sir. Private First Class Chen is our most knowledgeable guide for those facilities." Kane's gaze found Maya, and she felt the weight of his assessment. For a moment that seemed to stretch forever, he studied her face with the kind of attention that suggested recognition, though she was certain they'd never met. "Private Chen," Kane said, approaching her position, "I'm told you're familiar with every detail of this building." "Yes, sir. I've been responsible for its maintenance for the past 3 months." Something flickered in Kane's eyes, surprise perhaps, or anger quickly suppressed. 3 months of maintenance duty. Interesting assignment for someone with your background. Maya's pulse quickened, but she kept her expression neutral. "I serve where the Army needs me, sir." "Indeed." Kane gestured toward the building entrance. "Shall we proceed with the tour?" As they walked into Building C, Maya began the standard briefing she'd memorized about the facility's purpose and capabilities, but Kane interrupted her after only a few sentences. "Private Chen, walk with me privately for a moment." He gestured to his entourage. "The rest of you can examine the administrative areas. We'll rejoin you shortly." Maya led Kane down the corridor toward the VIP suites, her mind racing with questions she couldn't voice.
When they were alone, Kane's demeanor shifted subtly, the formal command presence giving way to something more personal. "Maya Chen," he said quietly, "Stanford University, summa cum laude, international relations with a focus on Middle Eastern studies, fluent in Arabic, Pashto, Farsi, and Urdu, recruited for special assignment immediately following basic training." Maya remained silent, though her chest tightened with each detail he recited. Operation Mountain Storm, January through August 2024. Deep cover infiltration of Taliban leadership networks in the Korangal Valley. Primary mission, intelligence gathering on foreign fighter recruitment and weapons smuggling operations.
Kane stopped walking and turned to face her directly. Secondary mission, location and extraction of 2 captured Marine Force recon operators who'd been missing for 6 weeks. Maya's composure finally cracked, her eyes widening slightly at the mention of classified details that should have been known to fewer than a dozen people. "You found them," Kane continued relentlessly. "Staff Sergeant Michael Torres and Corporal David Kim, both of whom had been presumed dead. You located them in a cave complex 30 miles from their last known position, maintained your cover for 2 weeks while planning their extraction, and then executed a solo rescue operation during a blizzard that military weather services had declared impossible for helicopter operations." Maya's throat felt dry as sand. "Sir, I don't know what. During the extraction, your position was compromised. You held off a Taliban assault for 47 minutes while waiting for emergency evacuation, sustaining shrapnel wounds from an IED while providing covering fire that allowed the helicopter to land safely." Kane's voice dropped to barely above a whisper. "Both Marines survived. Torres made a full recovery and is currently serving as an instructor at the Scout Sniper School. Kim lost his left leg below the knee, but refused medical retirement and now serves as an intelligence analyst at CENTCOM." Maya felt tears threatening for the first time in months. She'd received no word about the men she'd rescued, no confirmation that her sacrifice had meant anything beyond another classified file gathering dust in a Pentagon vault. "They put in for you to receive the Medal of Honor," Kane said gently. "The recommendation was endorsed by their chain of command, supported by video evidence from your helmet camera, and backed by testimony from the helicopter crew who witnessed your actions." Maya's legs felt weak. "Sir, I never heard." "Because someone buried it." Kane's voice hardened with controlled fury. "Someone decided that a Medal of Honor recipient would be too visible, too likely to attract attention to operations that needed to remain classified. So instead of the recognition you earned, you were transferred to the most insignificant assignment the Army could find and told to keep your mouth shut." Maya leaned against the corridor wall, overwhelmed by revelations that recontextualized everything she'd endured. The punishment duty, the deliberate humiliation, the exile from meaningful work. It had all been designed to make her invisible, to bury her accomplishments along with the secrets she carried. "Who made that decision?" she asked. Kane's expression suggested he knew the answer but couldn't share it. Someone who confused secrecy with security. Someone who thought hiding heroism was more important than honoring it. He pulled a small device from his pocket, a secure communication unit that Maya recognized from her intelligence work. "What I'm about to tell you is classified, but you've earned the right to know. 3 days ago, the President signed a directive declassifying Operation Mountain Storm and authorizing public recognition for personnel who served with distinction." Maya stared at him in disbelief. "Your Medal of Honor recommendation has been resubmitted and fast-tracked through the approval process. The ceremony is scheduled for next month at the White House." The corridor seemed to spin around Maya as she processed the magnitude of what Kane was telling her. After 3 months of degradation and doubt, after convincing herself that her sacrifice had been meaningless, she was learning that recognition had been waiting all along. "But first," Kane said with a slight smile, "we need to address your current situation. I believe some people here have been operating under false assumptions about who you are and what you've accomplished." Maya heard voices approaching from the main corridor, First Sergeant Davis leading Kane's entourage on their inspection tour. In moments, they would rejoin the group, and Maya's 3-month exile would officially end.
But she also heard something else. The distinctive sound of Staff Sergeant Walsh's voice, sharp with authority as she berated someone about uniform standards. Maya realized with crystal clarity that her story was about to come full circle, that the woman who'd made her life miserable was about to learn exactly who she'd been tormenting. "Are you ready, Private Chen?" Kane asked, straightening his own uniform in preparation for what was to come. Maya stood up straighter, feeling strength return to her limbs and purpose return to her heart. For 3 months, she'd endured humiliation while protecting classified secrets and honoring her oath of service. Now, finally, it was time for the truth. "Yes, sir, I'm ready." The sound of approaching footsteps echoed through Building C's polished corridors as First Sergeant Davis led the inspection party toward Maya and General Kane's location. Maya could distinguish individual voices now, the measured tones of Kane's staff officers, the nervous energy of base personnel, and rising above it all, Staff Sergeant Walsh's sharp commands directed at someone unfortunate enough to cross her path. "Stand straight, soldier. This is a general officer inspection, not some casual walkthrough." Maya heard Corporal Torres's voice respond with professional courtesy, though she could detect the underlying tension. Torres had volunteered to assist with the inspection, probably hoping to observe how senior leadership handled situations like Maya's.
Kane adjusted his uniform jacket and checked his watch. "In about 30 seconds, Private Chen, your life is going to change dramatically. Are you prepared for that?" Maya nodded, though she wasn't certain anyone could truly prepare for the magnitude of transformation Kane was describing. 3 months of systematic degradation had conditioned her to expect the worst from every interaction with authority figures. The concept of vindication seemed almost foreign. "Sir, what exactly will happen to Staff Sergeant Walsh and Sergeant Kowalski?" Maya asked quietly. Kane's expression hardened slightly. "That will depend on what my investigation reveals about their conduct. Incompetence can be corrected through training and counseling. Deliberate abuse of authority requires more serious remediation." The inspection party rounded the corner, and Maya snapped to attention alongside Kane. First Sergeant Davis led the group, followed by Kane's staff officers, base command personnel, and finally Walsh, with several junior NCOs including Torres. Walsh's expression when she spotted Maya was a mixture of confusion and irritation. "Private Chen, what are you doing here? You should be conducting the escort tour, not standing around socializing." Kane stepped forward before Maya could respond. "Staff Sergeant Walsh, I presume. I'm General Kane. Private Chen has been providing me with an excellent briefing on this facility." Walsh's demeanor shifted instantly to exaggerated deference. "Yes, sir, General Kane, it's an honor to meet you. I hope Private Chen has been adequate for your needs." "More than adequate," Kane replied smoothly. "In fact, I'd like to discuss Private Chen's qualifications with you in more detail. I understand she's been assigned to maintenance duties under your supervision." "Yes, sir. Chen's been learning the fundamentals of military service through hands-on experience. Sometimes soldiers with academic backgrounds need practical training to understand real Army work." Maya nodded Torres's sharp intake of breath at Walsh's casual dismissal. Several other female soldiers in the group exchanged meaningful glances, recognizing the familiar pattern of diminishing women's accomplishments. Kane nodded thoughtfully. "Practical training. Interesting perspective. Tell me, Staff Sergeant, what specific deficiencies in Private Chen's performance led to her assignment to maintenance duties?" Walsh hesitated, clearly unprepared for detailed scrutiny. "Well, sir, it's more about ensuring she develops proper military bearing and work ethic. College graduates sometimes need adjustment to military standards." "I see. And in your professional assessment, has this training been effective?" "Absolutely, sir. Chen learned valuable lessons about attention to detail and following orders without question." Kane's aide-de-camp had been taking notes throughout the exchange, his pen moving steadily across a small notebook. "Staff Sergeant Walsh," Kane continued, "I'd like you to meet someone."
He gestured to the civilian woman who'd accompanied his party. She stepped forward with the confident bearing of someone accustomed to high-stakes briefings. "This is Miss Rebecca Harrison from the Defense Intelligence Agency. Miss Harrison has been reviewing personnel files for soldiers with specialized backgrounds who may have been misassigned due to classification concerns." Harrison opened a tablet and began reading in a clear professional voice. Private First Class Maya Chen, graduated summa cum laude from Stanford University with degrees in International Relations and Middle Eastern Studies. Speaks 5 languages fluently, including Arabic, Pashto, and Farsi. Scored in the 99th percentile on military aptitude tests and was immediately recruited for special assignment following basic training. Walsh's confident expression began to falter as the recitation continued. Assigned to Operation Mountain Storm, a classified deep-cover infiltration mission in Afghanistan's Korangal Valley. Primary objectives included intelligence gathering on Taliban leadership networks and weapons smuggling operations. Maya noticed First Sergeant Davis's eyebrows rise in surprise. Even she hadn't known the full scope of Maya's background. During this operation, Harrison continued, Private Chen located and rescued 2 missing Marine Force recon operators who had been presumed dead. She maintained her cover for 2 weeks while planning their extraction, then executed a solo rescue operation under impossible weather conditions.
The corridor had fallen completely silent except for Harrison's steady voice. Private Chen held off a Taliban assault for 47 minutes while providing covering fire for the evacuation helicopter. She sustained multiple shrapnel wounds from an IED blast but continued fighting until both Marines were safely evacuated. Torres stepped forward slightly, her eyes wide with recognition. "Ma'am, did you say Torres? Staff Sergeant Michael Torres?" Harrison nodded. "Marine Force Recon. He's currently serving as an instructor at Scout Sniper School, thanks to Private Chen's actions." "That's my older brother," Torres whispered. "He told me someone saved his life in Afghanistan, but the details were classified. He said he'd never be able to thank his rescuer properly." Maya felt tears threatening as the connection crystallized. Amanda Torres, the woman who defended her just yesterday, was the sister of one of the Marines she'd rescued. The irony was almost overwhelming. Kane stepped forward again, his voice carrying the weight of absolute authority. Private Chen's actions were recommended for the Medal of Honor by her chain of command, endorsed by military leadership, and supported by video evidence from her helmet camera. Walsh's face had gone pale, but Kane wasn't finished. Instead of receiving the recognition she earned, Private Chen was transferred to maintenance duties and ordered to remain silent about her service. For 3 months, she has endured systematic humiliation while protecting classified information and honoring her oath of service. Kane turned his attention directly to Walsh, his voice dropping to a level that somehow seemed more threatening than shouting. "Tell me, Staff Sergeant Walsh, knowing what you know now, do you still believe Private Chen needed practical training in military fundamentals?" Walsh opened her mouth several times, but no words emerged. Maya could see the woman's mind racing, trying to process the magnitude of her error and its potential consequences. Kane didn't wait for her response. "Miss Harrison, please continue with the briefing." Harrison consulted her tablet again. 3 days ago, President Johnson signed a directive declassifying Operation Mountain Storm and authorizing public recognition for personnel who served with distinction. Private Chen's Medal of Honor recommendation has been resubmitted and approved for fast-track processing. The silence that followed was broken by Corporal Torres, who stepped forward and saluted Maya with tears streaming down her face. "Ma'am, my brother owes you his life. Our whole family owes you a debt we can never repay." Maya returned the salute, her own composure finally cracking. "He doesn't owe me anything, Corporal. We look out for each other. That's what we do." Kane smiled for the first time during the inspection. "Private Chen,
By order of the President of the United States and the Secretary of the Army, you are immediately promoted to the rank of Staff Sergeant, effective today." He pulled out a small box containing sergeant stripes and handed them to First Sergeant Davis. "First Sergeant, if you would do the honors." Davis stepped forward with obvious pride and began pinning the new rank insignia on Maya's uniform. As she worked, she spoke quietly enough that only Maya can hear. "I knew you were special from day one. I just never imagined how special." As Davis finished with the promotion ceremony, Kane addressed the entire group. "Staff Sergeant Chen will be reassigned to duties appropriate to her qualifications and experience. She'll be joining my staff as a special advisor on counterterrorism operations while preparing for her Medal of Honor ceremony at the White House." He turned back to Walsh, who stood frozen in obvious shock. "As for the personnel management issues we've discovered here, there will be a full investigation. Staff Sergeant Walsh, you'll report to the Inspector General's office at 1400 hours today to provide a detailed account of your supervision decisions." Maya watched Walsh's career implode in real time, but found herself feeling more pity than satisfaction. Walsh had been a product of a system that rewarded conformity and punished distinction, especially in women. Her actions had been inexcusable, but they reflected broader problems that would outlast any individual punishment. Kane addressed Maya one final time. "Staff Sergeant Chen, you've endured 3 months of treatment that would have broken lesser soldiers. You maintained your integrity, protected classified information, and honored your oath of service even when the Army failed to honor you." He extended his hand for a handshake. "On behalf of a grateful nation, thank you for your service and sacrifice." As Maya shook Kane's hand, she felt the weight of 3 months' humiliation finally lifting from her shoulders. Around her, she could see the faces of fellow soldiers, some shocked, some proud, some ashamed of their previous assumptions. But it was Torres's face that held her attention. The young corporal was beaming with pride and gratitude, her earlier defense of Maya now revealed as even more significant than either of them had realized.
Maya had survived her exile and emerged stronger. The truth, as it always did, had finally come to light. And somewhere in a classroom at Scout Sniper School, Staff Sergeant Michael Torres was teaching young Marines lessons that included the importance of never leaving anyone behind. Lessons learned from a woman whose name he'd never known until today. The story had come full circle, but Maya's real journey was just beginning. 2 weeks later, Maya stood in her new office at the Pentagon studying satellite imagery of emerging threats in the Middle East. The transition from scrubbing floors at Fort Harrison to analyzing intelligence for Special Operations Command had been surreal, like stepping through a portal between 2 different universes. Her nameplate read SSG Maya Chen, Counterterrorism Analyst, and every morning she had to resist the urge to check if it was real. The office was small but functional, with secure computer terminals, classified filing cabinets, and a window overlooking the Pentagon's central courtyard. More importantly, it represented recognition of her true capabilities after months of deliberate suppression. A knock on her door interrupted her analysis. "Come in." Corporal Amanda Torres entered, carrying a folder marked with classification stamps. She'd been temporarily assigned to Maya's unit as part of a cross-training program that Kane had expedited following the events at Fort Harrison. "The latest intelligence reports from Afghanistan, Staff Sergeant," Torres said, setting the folder on Maya's desk. "And I have some personal news that might interest you." Maya gestured for Torres to sit. Their professional relationship had evolved into genuine friendship over the past 2 weeks, built on mutual respect and shared experiences of overcoming military bureaucracy. "What's the news?" Torres smiled broadly. "My brother Michael called last night. He's been assigned as my escort for your Medal of Honor ceremony next week. Apparently, he specifically requested the honor." Maya felt a familiar tightness in her throat. The upcoming ceremony at the White House remained surreal to her, a culmination she'd never expected after months of exile and humiliation. "How is he handling everything?"
Learning the truth about his rescue, I mean. Better than expected, Torres replied thoughtfully. He said it answered questions that had been bothering him for months. The timing of the extraction, the precision of the covering fire, the way someone had managed to locate them when entire Marine units had failed. She leaned forward slightly. He also said something else. He told me that during the firefight, he heard someone speaking Pashto to the Taliban attackers, but with an accent that confused them. They couldn't figure out if the voice belonged to a foreign fighter or an Afghan commander. Maya remembered that detail clearly. Speaking their language had been both a tactical advantage and a psychological weapon, creating uncertainty among enemies who'd expected conventional American tactics. Your linguistic skills probably saved more lives than just his and Kim's, Torres continued. The Taliban unit spent crucial minutes trying to figure out who they were fighting instead of coordinating their assault. Before Maya could respond, her secure phone rang. The caller ID showed General Kane's direct line. Staff Sergeant Chen. Maya, I need you in Conference Room C in 10 minutes. We have a developing situation that requires your expertise. On my way, sir. Maya grabbed her security badge and classification guide. Torres, can you handle the Afghanistan analysis review? I need to brief General Kane on something urgent. Absolutely, Staff Sergeant. Conference Room C was a secure facility 3 levels below ground, designed for discussions of the most sensitive intelligence matters. Maya's security clearance had been restored and upgraded following Kane's intervention, giving her access to information that few people outside the intelligence community ever saw. Kane was waiting with 2 other officers Maya recognized from intelligence briefings. Colonel Sarah Martinez commanded the Defense Intelligence Agency's Counterterrorism Center, while Lieutenant Colonel James Wright led special operations planning for the region. Maya, we have a situation developing in eastern Afghanistan, Kane began without preamble. 3 days ago, a Taliban cell captured a female army captain during a convoy ambush near the Pakistan border. Maya's stomach tightened. Female service members captured by Taliban forces faced particular brutalities that male prisoners often escaped. Kane activated a wall-mounted display showing satellite imagery of rugged mountain terrain. Captain Lisa Park, military intelligence. She was conducting liaison work with Afghan forces when her convoy was hit by a coordinated IED and small arms attack. What makes this case special? Maya asked, though she suspected she already knew the answer. Colonel Martinez stepped forward. Captain Park was carrying classified information about ongoing operations against Taliban leadership networks, information that could compromise assets we've spent years developing. Maya studied the terrain displayed on the screen. The geography was hauntingly familiar, the same type of mountain valleys where she'd operated during her own classified mission. The Taliban cell holding her is led by Commander Abdul Rahman, Kane continued. Intelligence indicates they're planning to move her to a more secure location within 48 hours, probably across the Pakistani border where extraction would become nearly impossible. Lieutenant Colonel Wright pointed to specific locations on the map. We've identified 3 possible holding sites based on communications intercepts and surveillance data. All are in caves or fortified positions that would require significant force to assault directly. Maya saw where the briefing was heading. You're considering a covert extraction operation. We're beyond considering, Kane replied grimly. The operation is authorized and resources are being positioned. The question is whether we can duplicate the success of your previous mission. Maya felt the familiar weight of responsibility settling on her shoulders. Lives hung in the balance, and her unique skills might be the difference between success and catastrophe. What specific intelligence do we have about Rahman's cell? She asked. Martinez consulted her tablet. Approximately 20 fighters, mixed Afghan and foreign nationals. Rahman himself is a veteran commander who evaded capture for over 5 years. He's known for using female prisoners as propaganda tools before executing them publicly. The implications sent a chill through Maya. Captain Park was running out of time, and conventional rescue operations would likely result in her death before assault teams could reach her position. There's another factor, Kane added quietly. Captain Park is the daughter of General Patricia Park, commander of Army Intelligence and Security Command. This situation has attention at the highest levels of government. Maya understood the political dimensions, but tried to focus on tactical realities. What assets are available for the operation? Wright pulled up deployment charts on his tablet. 2 Special Forces A-teams are being repositioned to Forward Operating Base Chapman. Navy SEALs from DevGru are standing by for insertion. Air support includes attack helicopters and AC-30 gunships. That's a significant footprint for a covert operation, Maya observed. Which is why we need someone who can get close without triggering defensive responses. Someone who can blend into the local population, gather real-time intelligence, and potentially create opportunities for extraction that wouldn't exist otherwise. Maya realized they were asking her to volunteer for another deep cover mission, this time with even higher stakes and shorter timelines than her previous operation. How much time would I have to prepare? 18 hours, Martinez answered. You'd insert via high-altitude parachute drop, establish local cover, and begin reconnaissance immediately. Maya studied the terrain maps while calculating distances, timelines, and risk factors. The mission would require everything she'd learned during her previous deployment, plus improvisation skills that couldn't be taught in any training program. What about extraction? If I locate Captain Park, how do we get both of us out safely? That depends on what you find, Wright replied. Best case scenario, you identify an opportunity for the assault teams to strike with minimal resistance. Worst case, you'll need to adapt and overcome until support can reach your position. Kane leaned forward. Maya, I won't lie to you. This mission carries extreme risk with no guarantee of success. Your previous operation succeeded because you had weeks to establish cover and develop intelligence networks. This time, you'll be working alone with a compressed timeline against an enemy who's specifically alert to rescue attempts. Maya appreciated his honesty. Special operations always involved calculated risks, but this mission pushed those calculations to their limits. However, Kane continued, you're the only operative with the specific combination of skills this mission requires. Your cultural knowledge, linguistic abilities, and combat experience make you uniquely qualified for this type of insertion.
Maya looked around the room at the 3 senior officers watching her expectantly. Their expressions conveyed confidence in her abilities mixed with awareness of what they were asking. If I volunteer for this mission, what happens to my Medal of Honor ceremony? Kane smiled grimly. It gets postponed until you come home. The president's been briefed on the situation and agrees that Captain Park's life takes priority over ceremonial schedules. Maya thought about Captain Park, somewhere in Taliban custody, probably wondering if anyone even knew she was missing. She thought about the female soldiers at Fort Harrison who were still fighting daily battles against discrimination and diminished expectations. She thought about her own journey from exile to vindication and the responsibility that came with recognition. I'll need detailed intelligence files on Raman's cell, current weather patterns in the target area, and communication protocols for coordination with assault teams, she said finally. Kane's expression showed both relief and concern. You're volunteering? Maya stood up straighter, feeling the weight of her new rank insignia and the trust it represented. Staff Sergeant Maya Chen, reporting for duty, sir. When do we begin mission planning? The room erupted in controlled activity as the 3 officers began coordinating the complex logistics of inserting a single operator into one of the most dangerous regions on Earth. Maya realized her 3-month exile had been preparation for this moment, a test of her resilience and commitment that would now serve her in circumstances where failure meant not just personal consequences, but the life of a fellow female soldier who needed someone to refuse to leave her behind. The story was far from over. In fact, it was just beginning. 36 hours later, Maya crouched behind a boulder formation in the Hindu Kush Mountains, her breath forming small clouds in the frigid air. The insertion had gone flawlessly, a nighttime halo jump from 25,000 feet that placed her 15 kilometers from the target area with no detection by Taliban forces.
Now, dressed as a local woman in traditional Afghan clothing, she observed the cave complex where intelligence suggested Captain Park was being held. Through her concealed binoculars, Maya counted 12 Taliban fighters visible around the entrance. Their relaxed posture suggested they felt secure in their mountain stronghold, confident that American forces couldn't reach them without massive helicopter assaults that would be detected hours in advance. They were wrong. Maya's earpiece crackled with Kane's voice from the command center at Bagram Air Base. "Phoenix, this is Control. What's your assessment?" "Control, Phoenix. Target location confirmed. 12 hostiles visible. Estimated total force 20 as briefed. Cave entrance shows recent activity consistent with prisoner detention." Maya shifted position slightly, getting a better angle on the cave mouth. "I need to get closer for visual confirmation of the package." "Understood, Phoenix. Assault teams are in position but holding at designated coordinates. Your call on timing." Maya checked her equipment one final time. Besides the traditional Afghan garments that provided her cover, she carried a suppressed pistol, climbing gear, communication devices, and enough medical supplies to treat serious injuries. Everything was designed for mobility and concealment rather than sustained combat. The approach to the cave complex required crossing 800 meters of exposed terrain, but Maya had identified a route that used natural cover and would put her in position during the evening prayer period when guard alertness typically decreased. As the sun began to set behind the western peaks, the sound of the call to prayer echoed across the valley. Maya moved from her concealment, adopting the careful gait of a local woman navigating difficult terrain. Her head covering obscured her features while allowing peripheral vision essential for tactical awareness. The first checkpoint came sooner than expected. 2 Taliban fighters emerged from a concealed position, their AK-47s trained on Maya as they called out in Pashto. "Stop! Who are you, and what business do you have here?" Maya responded in the local dialect she'd perfected during months of preparation. "I seek Commander Rahman. I will bring information about American movements in the valley below." The fighters exchanged glances. Information about enemy movements was valuable enough to disturb their commander, but unexpected visitors were always suspicious. "What information?" the senior fighter demanded. Maya lowered her voice conspiratorially. "Helicopters, many helicopters, moving toward the Pakistan border. They will pass near here before dawn." This was partially true. American aircraft were indeed moving through the region, though their actual destinations were carefully planned to support Maya's mission rather than threaten Rahman's position.
After a brief discussion, one fighter gestured toward the cave entrance. "Commander Rahman will decide if your information has value. Come." Maya followed them up the rocky path, her heart rate controlled despite the extreme danger of her position. Every step brought her closer to Captain Park, but also deeper into enemy territory where discovery would mean certain death. The cave entrance opened into a larger chamber lit by oil lamps and heated by a wood fire. Maya counted 8 more Taliban fighters inside, plus an older man with a graying beard and intelligent eyes who could only Commander Rahman himself. Rahman studied Maya with the wariness of a man who'd survived 5 years of American manhunts. "You bring information about helicopter movements?" "Yes, Commander. American forces are moving equipment toward the border. Many aircraft, too many to be routine patrols." Rahman questioned her for several minutes about timing, directions, and aircraft types. Maya provided details that were accurate enough to seem credible while carefully avoiding information that could compromise actual operations. Finally satisfied, Rahman gestured to one of his subordinates. "Give her food and shelter for the night. If her information proves accurate, she will be rewarded." As Maya was led deeper into the cave complex, she glimpsed what she'd come to find. In a side chamber secured by iron bars, Captain Lisa Park sat with her back against the stone wall. Even in the dim lighting, Maya could see that Park had been beaten but appeared alert and defiant. Their eyes met for just a moment, and Maya saw recognition flash across Park's features.
The captain was intelligent enough to show no reaction, but Maya had confirmed what she needed to know. Park was alive, conscious, and in the location intelligence had predicted. Maya was given sleeping space in a chamber with 2 other women, wives of Taliban fighters who'd been accompanying the cell during recent movements. She waited until their breathing indicated deep sleep, then activated her emergency communication device. Control, Phoenix, package confirmed, location verified, preparing to execute extraction. Kane's response was immediate. Phoenix, assault teams are moving to support positions, estimate 25 minutes to reach the target area. Maya had 25 minutes to create an opportunity for rescue while ensuring Captain Park's survival. In the darkness of the cave complex, she began moving toward Park's holding area. The guard stationed outside Park's chamber was drowsing against the wall, his rifle across his lap, but his attention focused inward rather than on potential threats. Maya approached from his blind spot, using skills honed during countless training exercises and actual combat operations. The guard never knew what happened. Maya's chokehold rendered him unconscious in seconds, and she lowered his body silently to the ground before removing the keys from his belt. "Captain Park," she whispered as she unlocked the cell door. "I'm Staff Sergeant Chen, United States Army. We're getting you out of here." Park's eyes widened with hope and disbelief. "How many of you are there?" "Right now, just me, but that's about to change." Maya helped Park to her feet, assessing her injuries quickly. "Can you move under your own power?" "Yes, they roughed me up during interrogation, but nothing's broken." Maya handed Park a pistol and spare ammunition. "We need to reach the cave entrance in 10 minutes. Assault teams will create a distraction and we extract during the confusion." They moved through the cave complex using hand signals and careful coordination. Maya's knowledge of the layout, gained during her brief reconnaissance, allowed them to avoid most of the Taliban fighters who were sleeping or standing guard in other areas. The plan began to unravel when they encountered a fighter returning from guard duty who wasn't supposed to be in their path. Maya reacted instantly, her suppressed pistol ending the threat before he could raise an alarm, but the sound of his body hitting the ground carried farther than she'd hoped. Voices echoed through the caves as Taliban fighters began to investigate the disturbance. Maya and Park found themselves pinned in a narrow corridor with enemies approaching from both directions. "Control, Phoenix, compromise, need immediate support at cave entrance." Kane's voice was tense but controlled. "Phoenix, assault teams are 2 minutes out. Hold your position." 2 minutes felt like hours as Taliban fighters began systematic searches of the cave complex. Maya positioned herself and Park in a defensive position that offered some cover while allowing fields of fire toward both approaches. The first Taliban fighter appeared around the corner just as the sound of helicopters filled the air outside. Maya's precise shooting dropped him instantly, but his death cry alerted the entire cell to their presence. What followed was the longest 2 minutes of Maya's life. Suppressed pistol fire echoed through stone corridors as she engaged Taliban fighters while protecting Captain Park and counting seconds until rescue arrived. Her ammunition ran low, then ran out entirely, forcing her to scavenge weapons from fallen enemies while maintaining defensive positions. The explosion that breached the cave entrance was the most beautiful sound Maya had ever heard. Special Forces operators poured through the opening with overwhelming firepower and tactical precision, their night vision equipment and superior training quickly turning the tide of battle. "Friendly forces! Friendly forces!" Maya called out as the assault team approached their position. "2 American personnel, Corridor Junction, friendly!" The extraction was textbook perfect. Within minutes, Maya and Captain Park were aboard evacuation helicopters heading towards safety, while the Taliban cell that had held them was eliminated or scattered. 6 weeks later, Maya stood in the East Room of the White House, wearing her dress blue uniform with the Medal of Honor suspended from its distinctive ribbon around her neck. President Johnson had just finished reading the citation describing her actions in Afghanistan, both the original rescue mission and the recent extraction of Captain Park. In the audience, she could see faces that told the story of her journey. General Kane sat in the front row, his expression showing pride and satisfaction. Corporal Torres was there with her brother Michael, both wearing their dress uniforms and beaming with obvious joy. First Sergeant Davis had been flown in from Fort Harrison, representing the soldiers who'd witnessed Maya's transformation from exile to recognition. Even more meaningful to Maya were the faces she couldn't see but knew were watching. Female soldiers at bases around the world, women serving in combat roles who faced daily challenges to prove their worth, operators working in classified positions where their contributions might never be publicly acknowledged. Captain Park, fully recovered from her ordeal, had been promoted to major and assigned to General Kane's staff. During her debriefing, she described Maya's rescue operation as the most professional and courageous action she'd witnessed in 12 years of military service. As the ceremony concluded, Maya reflected on the path that had brought her to this moment. The humiliation at Fort Harrison, the systematic degradation designed to break her spirit, the months of scrubbing floors while carrying the weight of classified heroism, all of it had been preparation for moments when courage mattered more than recognition. She thought about the female soldiers still fighting for equality in military service, still proving themselves against impossible standards, still carrying burdens that their male counterparts would never fully understand. Her Medal of Honor wasn't just recognition for her individual actions. It was validation for every woman who'd served with distinction while facing discrimination and doubt. The reception following the ceremony brought together military leaders, government officials, and family members. Maya found herself in conversation with senior officers who wanted to understand how the system had failed her so completely and how they could prevent similar injustices in the future. But the conversation that mattered most came from a young female lieutenant who approached Maya near the end of the evening. "Staff Sergeant Chen, I graduate from West Point next month. I'm being assigned to a special operations unit, and I wanted to thank you for showing that women can excel in these roles." Maya smiled, remembering her own uncertainty as a young soldier entering a world that didn't always welcome her presence. "Lieutenant, the opportunities are there for those willing to seize them. Don't let anyone convince you that you don't belong. Your gender isn't a limitation, it's an additional capability that makes you more effective, not less." As Maya left the White House that evening, she realized her story was far from over. The Medal of Honor was recognition for past service, but it was also responsibility for future leadership. Women like Torres, Park, and the young lieutenant would face their own challenges in the years ahead, and Maya would be there to support them just as others had supported her. The girl who'd scrubbed floors while carrying the secrets of heroism had become a woman whose example would inspire others to serve with distinction regardless of the obstacles they faced. Sometimes the greatest victories came not from the battles you fought, but from the battles you made unnecessary for those who followed behind you. Maya's journey from humiliation to honor was complete, but her mission to ensure that journey wasn't necessary for future female soldiers was just beginning. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hits the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.